menembus penetrasi pasar yang ada di Indonesia. Data yang kami miliki saat ini sudah lebih hampir 500 company yang sudah menggunakan Manageengine di seluruh Indonesia, baik itu dari government, di private sector misalnya, education, sudah dipakai di penetrasi pasar yang ada di almost 500 data yang kami miliki saat ini sudah lebih hampir 500. Ini beberapa company yang sudah menggunakan Manageengine di seluruh Indonesia, baik. Nah, untuk proses implementasi sendiri, Prodata menyediakan services untuk sampai ke level enterprise market tentunya, di mana kami senantiasa memperbaiki proses implementasi yang kami miliki dari assessment, design, deployment, knowledge transfer sampai ke optimization-nya, sehingga kami bisa membuat atau memberikan service yang lebih baik dalam proses implementasi, bahkan sampai ke level support. Jadi kita juga menyiapkan implementation dan after sale support untuk semua kebutuhan Manageengine yang ada di Indonesia, even sampai ke level single point of contact dan juga layanan 24 kali. Demikian yang mungkin bisa saya sampaikan. Kalau misalnya Bapak Ibu sekalian ada pertanyaan yang lebih deep lagi mengenai solusi-solusi Manageengine dan solusi-solusi apa yang kami bisa berikan oleh
and where. And my name is Vivin. I have been with Zoho Corporation for 10 years now. I am a technology consultant. So what that means is I talk about technology, and I also implement some of the products that we have with Manageengine for Active Directory, for Office 365, and SIEM solutions. All right. Now, when you talk about infrastructure auditing, one thing that I understand is most of you listening to this session right now have Active Directory in your organization. So Active Directory basically has all your user information, and it has permission related information and all that. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to start with Active Directory auditing and then move on to the other aspects of the network, right? So why Active Directory auditing? That is the most important question that I'll have to answer. Okay, is Active Directory auditing even relevant in the year 2022? I think yes, because since most of you have Active Directory, which is on-prem, and at least some of you might have Azure also, and most of you would have SaaS applications, and all these three components are interconnected. All right. So you cannot completely ignore your on-premise Active Directory and its security. So it is very important that we pay enough attention to the on-premise Active Directory, especially the auditing aspect of it. All right. And then, of course, we'll have to focus on Azure, and we'll also have to take care of your SaaS applications and other network devices and all that. But the first step towards infrastructure auditing is by starting with your on-premise Active Directory. All right. Now, why is it even important? To explain that, I'm going to perform a small Active Directory hack experiment. Okay. So this is a 2012 R2 server. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to be using the command prompt, and using the command prompt, I'm going to copy the Active Directory database. Okay. The Active Directory database has all your user information and also password related information. So I I'm going to pose as an attacker, and I'm going to compromise the Active Directory database. All right. And I'm going to show you, or I'm going to expose some of the passwords of my users. All right. The whole idea of this experiment is to drive home the point that if you have Active Directory, you will have to audit your Active Directory. You will have to look out for important events. That's the whole idea of this exercise. All right. Now, if you go to C drive, Windows folder, NTDS folder, in the NTDS folder, you have this file called the ntds.dit file. Now, this is the Active Directory database, which has all your user information and password information. All right. But the key to unlock whatever is there in this file is present in a different location. Okay. So the key to unlock the Active Directory database is present in the system file. So you as an attacker need to have access to these two files, the Active Directory database and the system file. So you go to C, Windows System 32 config, you go to the system file. So this will give you the key to unlock whatever is there in the Active Directory database. But since we are talking about a live database, you cannot just copy, all right, and paste the file. Okay, if you try to do this, you get a file in use error message, which is very obvious, right? So we are talking about, an active database that you're trying to copy. So how do you actually copy an Active Directory database without getting caught or by leaving minimal digital trail? All right. So that is when I'm going to be using the command prompt. Now in the command prompt, I'm going to be using a utility called VSS admin. Now VSS admin basically helps you make a copy of any volume that you want. You have the create shadow command that will help you take a copy of C drive, D drive, E drive, or whatever. Okay, so we are now going to be using VSS admin. Okay, create shadow. I'm going to create a shadow for the entire C drive because both the files that I want is present inside the C drive. So I've now used VSS admin and the create shadow command for the entire C drive. I've now successfully created the shadow copy. So my Active Directory database and the key to unlock the database is present in the C drive, and now I have its shadow copy, right? So now let's try and copy the first file that we want, which is the Active Directory database, right? Copy. All right. So I'm just going to copy the Active Directory database first. So paste C Windows folder. Inside the Windows folder, I go to the Windows folder. I go to the NTDS folder, and then I copy the ntds.dit file. Now I want this file pasted on the desktop here. Okay, I want this file pasted somewhere on the desktop. So what I'm going to do is C users Vivin -1438, and I want the file on the desktop. Okay, now if this command is right, you will see the Active Directory database getting pasted here. Okay, now I hit enter. It says one file copied, and there you have the Active Directory database. Okay, now I told you that this file has your password information, and you need to use the system file to extract the password information, right? So I'm going to skip that part, and I'm going to jump to part number 3. I'm going to show you how your password hashes look like that are present in this file, right? So what you're seeing on the screen right now is not the actual password, but these are password hashes, right? So if your password is, let's say, password at 123, your hash will be something like this. And if your password is test at 123, it will be something like this. So these are hashes of your passwords. So you as an attacker are just one step away from knowing what the user passwords are. Okay, so you need to crack these hashes first. So you do a Control-A, Control-C. Okay, I'm going to be using something called crackstation.net, which is a free password hash cracker. Okay, so I'm going to paste all my password hashes here. I'm going to confirm that I'm not a robot and hit crack hashes. There you go. So you have the password hash, okay? The algorithm that was used for hashing and you also have the password now. Now imagine for a quick second that I now have passwords of, let's say, almost 10 users in Active Directory. Okay. And imagine what I can do with 10 passwords. I can probably log in as any one of those 10 users and do whatever I want in Active Directory. Now, this is why I really believe that Active Directory security has to be given its due importance. Okay, and that's exactly why I thought we will start with Active Directory auditing first, and then move on to the other areas of the network. All right. Now, with regards to Active Directory, I'm going to be discussing about 6 events. Namely, I'm going to be talking about how to find out suspicious server or laptop login activity. I'm going to show you I'm going to show you how to audit security group changes. In the sense, someone modifies domain admins, schema admins. How do you track that in real time? Right. Number 3, if your account gets locked out, okay, the lockout could be due to a legit reason, or the lockout could be because of another user trying to use your account. But how do you understand whether it's legit or is it something suspicious? So I'm going to show you how to analyze a lockout situation, right? And I'm also going to be talking about GPO auditing, and there is something that is ongoing right now, which is unsecure LDAP bindings, okay, which is nothing but a server in your office is allowing unsecure client connection. Unsecure clients are able to connect to that server, and how do you find that? Okay. And number 6 is PowerShell auditing. So you have your administrators, you have your technicians using PowerShell, but how do you find out what exactly are they doing with PowerShell, right? Basically who, what, when, and where of PowerShell auditing. So these are the 6 points that I will be talking, and then we'll move on to machine learning and how to use machine learning to understand various new attack patterns. All right. So let's start with point number 1, suspicious server or PC logon activity. All right. So let me actually also share something with you here. Okay. Now, if I actually go to Active Directory, all right, and let's say I select this user, and I delete this user, okay? Now, the action that I just performed will get recorded in your event viewer. And in the event viewer, you have the security log, okay, which will tell you who deleted the user, when was the user deleted, by whom was the user deleted, and all that, okay? So if you want to find out who, what, when, and where, the security log can answer your question. But there are 2 problems. Okay, the security log cannot get bigger than 300 megabytes, and you have unique security log for every server. Let's say you have 5 servers, you have 5 different security logs, right? And for every log, you have thousands of events. Okay, so these are the 2 challenges that I see with native Active Directory auditing. Number 1 is every domain controller has a unique security log, hence you have multiple logs. Number 2 is the size of the security log cannot get bigger than 300 megabytes. So if I delete a user today morning, and tomorrow morning you're opening up the security logs in order to find out who deleted the user, the information might be already out of the system, right? So this is exactly why we need to have a real-time auditing solution. Okay, and that's exactly is the first module that I'm going to be talking about, which is AD Audit Plus. So what AD Audit Plus does is it actually focuses on your on-premise Active Directory. It focuses on your Azure Active Directory. It reads logs from your servers, workstations, your file servers, NetApp, and EMC devices. Let's say I delete important files or I copy important files. So AD Audit Plus will be able to read information from all these platforms and then give it to you in the form of easily understandable reports in real time. That's the best part. Okay. Now let's look at some of the important events here. All right. The first event that I'm going to be talking about is vulnerable Netlogon vulnerability. Vulnerable Netlogon connections, right? Now, what is a vulnerable Netlogon connections? Well, if a normal user is able to access resources that only an administrator is supposed to access, that is a critical elevation of privilege vulnerability. And that's exactly what you see on the screen. All right. So what happens here is an attacker basically establishes a connection, which is called vulnerable net logon connection, to an Active Directory domain controller. Okay. So it's the topmost attack that you can perform on an Active Directory infrastructure, which is hitting the domain controller. Because when I hit the domain controller, I get hold of all user information, exactly the same way I showed you in my hacking experiment. All right. So what can an attacker do? So an attacker who has gained contact over let's say domain controllers, especially vulnerable domain controllers, because of this exploit, okay, will be able to run any malicious application, okay, on any device on the network. Okay, please understand the importance of this. So first, the attacker gains access to a domain controller, and then he can run any malicious application on any device that is connected on the network. And this applies to even the latest 2019 servers. Okay, I've included the source for the document here. Of course, you have a patch for all this, but how do you understand whether you have such ongoing unsecure connections today? Okay, now that is when we will be able to use AD Audit Plus, okay, and then we'll be able to tell you if there are any vulnerable net logon connections, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply run the report, okay? So I'm just going to search for the report name here, vulnerable net logon connections, okay? And I'm going to check for any vulnerable net logon connections that happened in the last 24 hours using AD Audit Plus. Please bear in mind, AD Audit Plus is just for, it's not just for your on-premise auditing, it is also for your Azure auditing and also file servers auditing too, okay? Now, in the last 24 hours, there are no vulnerable net logon connections. But what if you want to check for vulnerable net logon connections in the last 6 months? Well, you can very well go and then check for quarters, check for any year connections and all that, okay? So it's up to you to select any time frame that you want and see whether your domain controllers are allowing, this vulnerable S-channel connections, okay? Fortunately, I don't have any connections, any unsecure connections. That's good news for me, right? So vulnerable net logon connections is the #1 auditing principle that I want you to focus on. Please have this report in mind. This will help you find out whether your domain controllers are allowing unsecure connections, all right? Now let's move on to topic #2. Of course, for vulnerable net logon connections, if you're not going to use AD Audit, you'll have to watch out for 5827 and 5828 from the event viewer. Okay. Of course, the slide deck will be shared with you, so you can make use of the event IDs if you're not using AD Audit Plus. Right. Now let's look at privilege escalation happening in the form of groups and OUs. All right. So I'm going to show this to you in real time now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select a group called the domain admins group. Okay, so you have the domain admins group here. So this is the topmost group, which is a group designated for the administrators of the domain. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up this group. Okay, and I'm going to remove a user from this group. Okay, let's remove Brandon Curry. Okay, remove. So Brandon Curry is removed from this group, apply and okay. So this is a top level group modification. So if I am a regular user and if I'm going to add myself to domain admins and you as an administrator do not know that I've done that, then it's a serious problem, right? So what AD Audit Plus does is if you actually open up AD Audit here, okay, and if you look at the recent alerts section, okay, we have now clearly captured the action that was performed on the group. So it says member Brandon Curry was removed from the global security group domain admins by Vivin -1438. And you also have the timestamp of the action. Okay, so basically who, what, when, and where is answered here. So any changes that take place to your Active Directory infrastructure will be captured in real time. That's the whole idea here. Okay, so that's Active Directory group auditing. So if you just go to the reporting section here, in the reporting section, if you look for, let's say, group changes. So you have various types of auditing capabilities here. So any groups that get created, any groups that get deleted, members added or removed to security groups. So everything gets loaded here. So if you can see here, so I have the admin, I have someone being added to the administrators group or someone modifying the DHCP admin groups. All these groups that you see here are high privilege groups. And this is exactly why you should be auditing security group changes in real time, right? And as I mentioned earlier, if you are going to depend on the security log, you might not get information in real time because chances are, if you are run an office with huge user volumes, there are chances that the events might get overwritten, right? So we've discussed two alarms here. Number one is for finding out vulnerable Netlogon connections. Number two is top level group modifications, all right? Now let's look at account lockouts, all right? So now what I'm going to do here is I am going to use AD Audit Plus. Especially in AD Audit Plus, I'm going to be using the account lockout analyzer. Okay, so I type account ACC and I get the account lockout analyzer. Let us assume that a user's account is locked out. Okay, and you as an administrator are going to unlock the user's account. But before unlocking the user's account, you need to verify whether the lockout is something suspicious or is it legit, right? So let's take the user AD manager here. Okay, the name of the user is AD manager and the user's account is now locked out. How do I verify whether this user's account lockout situation is legit or suspicious? Well, I get to know the domain in which the user belongs. I get to know the machine that the user used. I get to know the domain controller that was used for authentication. And I also get to know about the lockout time. Okay. And I have the event ID to confirm it. 4740 means the user's account is locked out. But how do I know whether it is suspicious or not? If I scroll all the way to the right, I have something called Analyzer Details. And when you click on Analyzer Details for the user AD manager, what happens here is this analysis component looks at 9 different places in order to see whether the user's account is configured anywhere and whether that's triggering the lockout. It will look for Windows services. It will look for scheduled tasks, network drive mappings, any logon sessions that are active, all right? Any process that is actually triggering the lockout, okay? Any application that is using the account AD manager for authentication that is actually triggering the lockout. If you have Exchange, we'll also be able to inspect the OWA and active sync events, right? Now, after analyzing all these 9 different components, okay, I get either nothing found message, which means for the user AD manager that is locked out, there are no Windows services that are associated for the lockout with the lockout situation. That's why you get nothing found. But when we take a look at scheduled tasks, you have 3 tasks or 4 tasks associated with the user AD manager plus or AD manager that is actually triggering the lockout. All right. So all I need to do is just, as an administrator, is just RDP into this machine and then remove the user's credential and update it. I'll be able to fix the lockout situation. All right. So any active logon session that is actually triggering the lockout, you'll be able to understand whether it's an RDP activity or not. If it's an RDP activity, you can simply close the session so that the user AD manager will not get locked out anymore. All right. So this analysis component is very important in order for you to find out whether a lockout is suspicious or not. All right. So this is alarm number 3. All right. Okay. Now let's look at something else here. Now, this is very important. I kindly request all of my administrators listening to this session to see whether you have any unsecure LDAP bindings happening. Okay. But before that, let me tell you what is an unsecure LDAP bind. All right. Now, all of you know that Active Directory is a client-server architecture, right? So your clients talk to the servers using a protocol called LDAP. And there are two types of LDAP connections. One is a secure connection. The ones that you see in green are secure connections. What that means is it is only a secure client that is connecting to the server. Okay. And then you have another type of connection called the unsecure connection, right? Now, secure connection is exactly what we want, but there are possibilities for unsecure clients to take part in Active Directory communication. How do you find out whether there are any unsecure clients talking to your servers, right? So we have two events that can indicate the presence of an unsecure connection. Okay, 2887 is one event, which is logged by your domain controller once in every 24 hours. Now, this event indicates that your domain controller is allowing unsecure LDAP connections. All right. Now, 2889 is a different event ID. Of course, it is an unsecure connection, but this is logged every time a client computer attempts an unsecure LDAP bind. All right. So let's say I'm an attacker. Okay, and my laptop is obviously an unsecure laptop with regards to your infrastructure. How do you as an administrator understand whether my laptop is connected to your network or not, and I'm trying to steal information or not? All right, so you can use 2887 and 2889. If there is a presence of 2887 or 2889, which means that there is a presence of unsecure LDAP connections. All right, now let me show you how AD Audit Plus helps you find that out. Right? So I go to server audit because we are talking about servers allowing unsecure client connections. I have a dedicated section for LDAP auditing here. And then you have number of daily unsecure LDAP binds. Okay. I'm now trying to find out whether there are any unsecure LDAP binds. Basically, I'm now looking for events 2887 and 2889 in my infrastructure. Okay. So in the last 30 days, it looks like I have so many unsecure LDAP binds. You have 2887 here, okay? And it also tells you the remarks and the message, the information about the client that is attempting connection. Of course, you have a patch given by Microsoft for finding out all or for fixing all this. But if you have not patched your system yet, okay, you really need to run this report by going to the server audit section in order to find out whether there are any unsecure connections to your domain controllers. All right. So please bear in mind that watching out for unsecure connections that take place to your domain controller is really crucial for you to protect your Active Directory infrastructure. Okay. So basically 2887 and 2889. All right. Now let's talk about PowerShell auditing here. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I can be a technician. I can be an administrator. In either case, I can do something or the other with PowerShell, right? But how do you understand whether the PowerShell executions are legit or is it something for stealing information? Okay. So what we do here is with AD Audit Plus, okay, we have a section dedicated for PowerShell auditing. So any process that gets triggered because of PowerShell, any script block that gets executed, any module that gets executed will be captured in real time. All right. So I'm going to show you an example here. So I'm now trying to find out any modules or any modules that were executed using PowerShell in the last 24 hours. So in the last 24 hours, no, nothing was executed. So let me actually select a different quarter. Okay. All right. So it looks like the user AD manager has executed PowerShell a lot of times. And then you have the user Harry, and then you have the user Mystery. Okay. So Mystery looks a bit suspicious. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm now trying to find out what was exactly in the script. Okay, so it looks like if you just take a look at the headers here for me, okay, the headers say it will tell you the username that actually executed the script. When was the script executed? What was the command? Whether it's a write command, get ACL, which is getting the permissions, creation of new objects, importing of CSV. Now, I just want you to think for a quick second here. Why should this user Harry import a CSV file and then execute a PowerShell script? Okay, the only time that you import a CSV file is to perform a bulk operation, right? So now I need to find out what this user has done with PowerShell, especially by importing a CSV file. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scroll all the way to the right. Okay, and I have something called script data here, which tells me what was in the script. Okay, so this tells me the location of the script, the name of the script, and it also tells me what was in the script. Okay, so when I click details, you get the script data. Okay, now just by going through the script, you as an administrator will be able to understand whether this script is something good or this is something that is to be escalated and noticed. All right, so auditing PowerShell, not just your modules, but also process and script blocks that gets executed with PowerShell is really important. All right. So I have now covered two important sections in the server auditing module. One is LDAP auditing, is to find out whether there are any unsecured connections being made to your domain controllers. And I told you what profile you should be looking out for. And the second profile is the PowerShell auditing profile, understanding who, what, when, and where with PowerShell. And if some user is going to execute a script, you really need to know what is in the script. All right. So these are some of the auditing conditions that I wanted to share with you. Now, this is just for your, as I mentioned earlier, this is predominantly for your Windows infrastructure, both your Active Directory as well as for your Azure Active Directory. Okay. Of course, we have file server auditing that takes care of all your file server auditing needs. Okay. But there is something more to auditing your Active Directory infrastructure, right? When you talk about infrastructure auditing does not limit itself to Active Directory or Azure Active Directory, right? So we have a lot of other log sources that we need to focus on. Okay, we need to focus on logs from your databases, okay, logs from your network devices. Let's say you have your VPN connection. So you really need to know what, who, what, when, and where in all these technology platforms, not just Windows, but also in your database, in your web stacks, in your network devices, and all that, right? Be it Unix, Linux, or your hypervisors, and all other types of logs. Okay, that is when I'm now moving from the AD Audit Plus module, which focuses on the Windows auditing part, to the Event Log Analyzer module. Now, the Event Log Analyzer module focuses on all your other log auditing needs, right? Such as your, the platforms that I just showed, okay? Your VPNs, your network devices, and all that, okay? Now, since most of us are still working from home, okay, one thing that I would like to share with you is, or one thing that I would like to suggest is, most of you would be using VPN to connect to your office network, right? Which means you have to have different types of, auditing profiles for your VPN as well, okay? Be it any provider that you have, be it Palo Alto or Cisco or Fortinet, be it any client that you use for connecting to your corporate network using VPN, there should be an ability for you to audit who, what, when, and where. And if there is a suspicious connection, you should also have the ability to block the connection from preventing it, from stopping it from doing more damage to your infrastructure. Okay. Now, the Event Log Analyzer module helps you understand who, what, when, and where of not just your Windows, because Windows is taken care of by AD audit. The event log analyzer module focuses on your Unix or Linux auditing, okay, your Cisco auditing, your network devices, your databases, all kinds of auditing related to other types of devices in your network. All right. Now, so far we have discussed about manual auditing, right? So we've discussed about Windows auditing. We also touched upon something related to VPN auditing and all that. Okay, all these are manual auditing profiles that the application will help you to gain insight about, right? But when you have terabytes and gigabytes worth of information getting generated in your infrastructure every day, wouldn't you need the help of a machine learning algorithm to basically tell you what is suspicious and what is not suspicious? That is exactly what we are going to see now. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce you to Log360. So Log360 is one platform that has the AD Audit Plus module, which focuses on your Windows auditing requirements. And it also has the Event Log Analyzer module, which basically takes care of your non-Windows auditing requirements. Right? Now, these two modules put together is what is called Log360. And inside Log360, we have this machine learning module called UEBA. Right? So what UEBA does is, we have all the logs from your Windows and your non-Windows platform. So UEBA is a machine learning algorithm that will go through all those logs, and it'll help you track any anomalies in your network. Okay. Now, let me give you a small example here. So this machine learning algorithm can be applied for your users. If there is any suspicious behavior from a user standpoint, yes, we'll be able to point that out. We can also find out if there are any machines that are infected. Okay, I'm going to give you an example here. Okay, first, let me start with the user's anomaly. So what you're seeing right here is the machine learning algorithm computing a user risk score. So you have a user called user1 with a high risk score of 56. Okay, but I'm going to focus on another user here. Okay. So if you take a look at this user called Bob, okay, the user risk score of Bob is 17. 17 is a low number. 17 is not alarming. All right. So the user Bob is secure. Okay, he's not a risky user. Okay, the machine learning tells you that Bob is not a risky user. But what if Bob's laptop is infected? Right? So that is when you go to the entities tab. The entities tab basically looks at your users' endpoints that are infected. So we have risk scores, not just for users, but also for entities. So if you go to entities here, you can see that Bob's Windows 7 laptop has a high risk score of 86. Okay. And if you're trying to find out what this user has done, just click on the user's account, and you see that there are multiple services getting installed on the host, multiple software getting installed, multiple removable disk deletes on the host. And that is why you have the confidence level of the risk to be 100. All right. So machine learning can help you make sense out of your Windows logs and also your non-Windows logs. Okay. So all these platforms put together is what is Log360. Log360 is basically a combination of AD Audit and also your event log analyzer, all put together in one single module, which basically helps you find out anomaly trends amongst your users and also the devices that you have in your infrastructure. So even if your devices are infected, the machine learning module will be able to reveal such suspicious actions so that you can take preventive measures even before that becomes an alarming problem. All right. So I hope I have given you a quick brief of what Log360 is all about and its machine learning capabilities. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot out those questions. If not, Thank you very much for your time and patience. So now we have, now that we have reached the end of the session here, so we need to be running certain polls, and I would kindly request Karthik to launch the poll. So after this poll, we have a quiz session, which will help users, which is basically like users answering certain questions, and then we'll be selecting a winner amongst those correct answers, right? So please do not go. We have a quiz associated with a prize, a gift voucher that is attached. So, all right. So I think we are done with the poll. And now it's for the session feedback. Please do let us know whether you found the session informative, the things that we discussed about infrastructure auditing. And just because we are pressed for time, we were not able to dive into the details, but I really hope that you've got an overall idea of what Log360 is all about. All right. All right. Thank you very much. Now it's time for our quiz. Okay. So let me quickly stop screen share. Roni, you can take control.
Okay, thank you, Vivin. Thank you for the presentation and the information. I will take from here for the quiz. Okay. Baik, terima kasih, Vin, atas materi yang sudah diberikan kepada kita pada siang hari ini. Kita akan mengikuti kuis mengenai topik yang baru saja kita bahas hari ini. Nanti silahkan Bapak Ibu sekalian masuk ke browsernya, kemudian ketik menti.com, lalu masukkan kode 46982068. Masuk ke menti.com, kemudian gunakan kode 46982068. Ada 5 pertanyaan, yang paling cepat dan paling tepatlah yang akan dapatkan voucher OVO dari kami, OVO atau Dana, nanti ada tim kami akan menghubungi Ibu sekalian, yang kami berikan untuk 3 orang pemenang ya, urutan 1, 2, dan 3. Kita kasih waktu 1 menit untuk para Bapak Ibu sekalian bisa join. Untuk materi modul kita pada siang hari ini nanti akan kami share ke email, nanti bisa, atau nanti Ibu bisa juga nanti kami, ini akan kami upload di YouTube juga nanti, materi kita pada hari ini. Baik, kita masih tunggu karena masih banyak yang masuk. Sampai 14.50. Pertanyaannya seputar materi webinar kita pada siang. Baik, kita mulai kuisnya. Selamat mengikuti, good luck. Baik, ada 46 orang yang benar. Tingkat satunya ada di Pak Budi, kemudian Pak Yong Ong, dan juga Pak Sigit. Kelas sementara di etapa pertama ini, kita lanjut ke pertanyaan nomor 2. Oke, baik, ada 51 yang benar. Lihat klasemen sementara. Baik, masih 3 topnya, masih Pak Budi, Pak Yong, dan juga Pak Sigit. Kita lanjut ke pertanyaan nomor 3. Top 3-nya masih sama, masih belum tergoyahkan. Kita lanjut ke pertanyaan keempat, masih banyak kesempatan, tikungan terakhir. Waktu habis, 50 orang benar, tasnya salah. Masih 3 besar, Pak Budi, Pak Yong, dan Pak Sigit. Nanti kepada yang 3 besar, nanti capture screen aja layarnya, nanti put email ke sales@prodata.co.id, nanti tim kami akan segera menghubungi Bapak atau Ibu sekalian. Nanti capture screen, kemudian kirim ke sales@prodata.co.id. 3 besarnya, 1, 2, dan 3. Oke, ini pertanyaan terakhir untuk quiz kita hari ini. Apakah pemenangnya? Masih Pak Budi sepertinya. Baik, Pak Budi, Pak Yong, dan Pak Sigit, silahkan capture screen layar Bapak Ibu sekalian, nanti kirim ke email ke sales@prodata.co.id, nanti tim kami akan menghubungi Bapak langsung. Sekali lagi kami mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu yang sudah bergabung pada webinar kita kali ini. Mudah-mudahan apa yang kami bagikan, prinsipal kami bagikan bisa bermanfaat, menambah wawasan, dan juga apabila ada pertanyaan mengenai solusi Manageengine, terutama Log360, materi yang baru saja kita ikuti barusan, itu bisa menghubungi kami di sales@prodata.co.id. Terima kasih juga atas masukan dan feedback-nya untuk sebagai bahan koreksi kami agar kami bisa memperbaiki webinar kami ke depannya. Stay tune, kami akan adakan webinar-webinar berikutnya dengan materi atau modul yang berbeda pula. Terima kasih atas waktunya, stay safe dan stay healthy untuk kita semua. Selamat siang. Terima kasih.